Already. Commit the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in Yahweh's sight. He is our strength and our Redeemer, and it is in His name, which is His authority, that we pray, praise, proclaim, project, and protect today's message. Aman. Welcome, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. Bakwat Tav. Raishan Shalom. Hola, mi nombre es Kofi. ¿Cómo está? Bonjour. Je m'appelle Kofi. Ça va? Ni hao, namaste. Osaya, Anakituya. Ohio, I see you. Habarigani, Manut, Akwaba, Etese, Jambo, Mimini Kofi, Nina Faraka, Kutana Wewe. Hello, everybody. I'm Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant of Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time by being a voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. We appreciate your presence on this rising. Thanks for spending some time with us again, as always. We know that you could be doing many different things. You could be spending time in many different ways. But we're thankful to you guys that you decided that you would go ahead and spend a little bit of time with us on this rising. We thank you guys. Shalom Allah Sham Yahweh and Kofi Helet service Christ Mashalom. Hey, we give all praise and honor to the Most High Yahweh Elohim. We give all praise and honor to Him for my wife, the Honorable Maya, who lives a life that's able to be honored. You can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish. Not A&D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. And we thank everybody for being on today. Thank you to the ministerial staff. We appreciate your presence. Those will be with us on the podcast in a little bit. Thank you so much for being on. Ministers Joseph and Sharon will be giving us a word again this rising. Also, too, we have Shabbat School, Shabbat Bits Sefer, or Shabbat Bayat Savar, which is for our children. So if you have babies and you'd like for them to attend, grandbabies, youth of all ages, whatever the case might be, we're working on making sure that we are making sure that our children are properly educated. And that leads us into what we're going to talk about today on this rising. And we thank everybody once again for being on. We appreciate you. And let's see. All righty, we have a little bit of problem in not letting anybody know that we're on the line. That's okay. But we're thankful to everybody for being on with us. Thanks for spending some time with us. And today I want to talk about 5 E's is what I'm led to talk about today. Prayerfully, we have some people joining us in a little bit. Today, we're going to talk about 5 E's. 5 E's. 5 E's. Words that start with the letter E. 5 of them. Right, to be able to help us to start thinking about things in a better light. Let's go and say hello to everybody once again. If you're joining us on Facebook, YouTube, or TikTok, we appreciate you. Those that will join us later on the podcast, but thank you so much for being on with us as well. Let's go ahead and get into this. How you doing, Sister Tori, Brother Key, Brother Steven, Sister Nadine? Yeah, TikTok says we're not on. I saw the number or whatever, so they're not giving the notification out. That's okay, though. We'll continue to do what we need to do and strive to do what we need to do. I might maybe turn off the app and turn it back on, and we'll see if that, sometimes that messes with their with their system a little bit and lets people finally know. But prayerfully, those who are looking for us, hashtag find Kofi, they'll be able to find us, and this message finds you well. But thank you for letting me know. It is what it is sometimes. But thank you again. And I'll be honest, sometimes, not just with TikTok, but with other things, sometimes, even like with Patreon, they don't necessarily get the notification out the way they're supposed to. So I won't, denigrate them, or what's the legal term? It's not hitting my brain right now, but, falsely accuse them of something. They may or may, sometimes things happen, but we praise y'all for those who are on, and we praise y'all that we can record it. Looks like people are starting to get the word now, but thank y'all for being on. Hello, Sister Monica, how you doing? Hello to everybody. Come on in, Natural Sweetness, Big Brother Thomas. Brother Jaron. We'll try to reach out to you guys later on if Sister Nadine's on as well. DF8. You said I need to go back to Africa, Sambo. I don't realize, are you saying I'm a Sambo spirit without knowing anything about me? I don't comprehend. Are you saying Sambo versus Uncle Tom, the real the real time, so to speak, the way people use the term time, not sure, but either way, come on in. Thank you for being on. Appreciate your presence. But yeah, how you doing, short man? Everybody who's coming on, appreciate you. So today I want to talk about 5 E's. 5 E's once again. 5 E's. What does that mean? Right? 5 E's that we're talking about specifically are going to be education or educate. We kind of went into this last night, but educate, empathy, execution or execute, edify, and elevate. We're talking about 5 E's today real quick. We don't have as much time as we normally do, so we are going to jump right in. But I want to talk about those 5 E's. I want to talk about how we need to make sure that we are going to not just in somebody else's system, but even in our personal walk and making sure that we deal with some of the things that are in our own family, right? We got to deal with 5 E's. Those 5 E's, once again, go like this. They're going to be that we must educate. We're going to see with the word educate, empathy, execute, edify, and elevate. Okay? Educate, empathy, execute, edify, and elevate. It's important that we get those down. Okay? I was never a slave. Well, according to the 13th Amendment, chattel slavery still exists for anybody who's been arrested. And even though I was wrongfully arrested and I've had it expunged on my record and never technically went to trial, when they put me in chains there, whatever, they were allowed to treat me as a slave. Now, if you also know how slavery works, see, you're so busy thinking that I'm only talking about chattel slavery, and you don't want to even learn about my family's story as far as you would actually know that there are people in my family who came from other places who were still enslaved, like my grandmother was still enslaved in places like Jamaica, believe it or not, legally. So, but if you pay taxes, by definition, you're a slave, right? If you know how law works, if you pay taxes, you're in debt. If you're in debt, you're a slave. A slave is in debt, right? That's why the United States of America supposedly fought the war in 1776 that they fought, because you did not want to be enslaved anymore, right? So therefore, you did not want to pay taxes. Taxation without representation. This is why Washington, D.C. still fights to make sure that they have taxation without representation. So listen a little bit first before we get into this place of saying that you already know where I'm headed, because you might find out that we have more agreement than disagreement. You hear what I'm saying? You might find out that we have more agreement than disagreement, but people are, oh my greatness, you're talking about this, you're reverse. No. I comprehend that the term white doesn't even really exist, or as far as the way we use it, like there's no such thing as a white person because all people are melanated. You can't exist without melanin, right? And the term white literally means the absence of color. It means to be reflective. It means to be translucent, right? It means to be see-through. It means to be bright, right? So you can be a blue, you can have a color blue that is white, according to actual definition. It wasn't until we were taught to fight against each other that we started using these terms in an incorrect manner. You said 200 years from now, we'll still be talking about this. We're enslaved at one point. Okay, once again, Edward, yeah, you're missing the point. See, and so once again, that's why we have to start with the first one of the 5 E's, educate. How you doing, Minister Sharon? You said you know nothing about genetic properties of amino acids and pigmentation. I don't know as much as many. I do know that everybody has a pineal gland. Everybody has a pituitary gland, which stimulates the pineal gland and stimulates different parts of the body, including the hypothalamus, right? And all of us deal with melanin across our body, the same way that plants deal with chlorophyll. That's why everybody needs sun, correct? So I might not know about all the amino acids in the manner that makes you feel comfortable, but I do know enough to be able to have an actual conversation. But hang in there, once again, before you start using ad hominem to attack people and make fun of people and do all these things. You see, if you recognize what they did to a group of people, you recognize what people have been doing to all people for quite some time, including trying to get us to be against one another. You see what I'm saying? And so we're not even able to get into the educate part because we can't educate. By the way, before everybody tears me up on all these different terms because it doesn't meet your particular definition, et cetera, because I'm not even worried about how you define, because you don't even recognize how etymology works. A word was fine first. And then somebody came and defined it. They deconstructed what was fine. They broke down what was fine. And then you have had it redefined, deconstructed, right? So many times that now you don't actually know what it was when it was fine in the first place. Hence, once again, why I don't necessarily believe that there's a such thing as a white person, because white by its original definition, not even the 1800s dictionaries that everybody's going to bring out to try and say that black and white actually should be reversed in what they mean. No, no, no. Like the original definition of white meant that it had no color. So there cannot be a human being that is white because every human being must have melanin. Even if you are albino or dealing with some type of albinism, excuse me, right? You must be white. By the way, even when you're talking about the measurements and all that stuff, you talk about amino acids, let's go a little deeper with it, right? If you're going to talk about this stuff, let's also get to the point to where even when we talk about the measurement of melanin is never measured from the outside in. It's always measured from the inside out, right? Yep, the borrower will be a slave to the lender. So if you're going to borrow from somebody, you must recognize whoever you borrow from, you are in debt to them. And hopefully your slave master is somebody who's allowing you freedom. Right? So you got to educate yourself. But before we get into this, you said white originally meant encompassing all colors of the spectrum, which applied to us. Once again, yeah, I know people are going to come from the Moorish 1800s version to where people are doing this, but you must recognize once again these terms before somebody changed that, like somebody changed the color of Christ, like somebody changed what a definition of a human being was by law. You know, like humus man means dark, rich, nutrient earth with a spirit inside. That's what humus man means, right? So all of us come from a human, therefore we're all human, right? But somebody changed the definition to where now, according to law, human is a monster. But also you could be a human as a natural person versus an artificial person. But there are many different types of persons, but persons are not always people, according to law, right? So when we're talking about redefining, you got to know the origin of it. Because even though people are changing things to be able to get you to be into a Western system to say that that's my standard for freedom, your standard for freedom should be something that comes from you. Because what does the word educate mean? Educate literally means that I'm reaching inside you, pulling out your potential, showing you what you could become or showing you what's already in you, putting it back inside you and then saying, okay, let's go ahead and reach your potential together as a community. How you doing, LaCrystal? Thanks for being on. How you doing, Elijah? You see, so we're dealing with these definitions where people have deconstructed what was already fine when the word was created, and we need to stop letting them redefine it so much, and we need to bring it back to its origin, what was fine in the original. This is the problem, right? Like when the Constitution says we the people, what you've been educated on is that people means plurality. In a sense, it does, but you don't know what the plurality is, because if you're not considered to be a nation, then you can't be a people. So if you're the people of the United States, you have to ask yourself, what does the United States even mean? Not talking about black only, not talking about white only. Get off the stuff, right? You saw a picture of something, you heard a homiletical structure of something, and you made a decision that I must be anti whatever. I'm not Republican, I'm not Democrat, I'm not a modern American and got sense enough to know it, as Malcolm X taught us, right? So what is the actual definition of a people? You have to ask yourself, are you a people? What constitutes a people? Even people that want reparations, you can't get reparations if you're not considered to be a people. And if you get reparations as a fake version of a people, or you get reparations as persons, it's technically still not reparations. Okay, sure. I have Phoenician blood in me. I comprehend what that is, right? Matter of fact, anybody who calls himself an Israelite, if you want to go deeper into that vein, they can't be an Israelite without talking about the phonetic blood that's in you, or the Kemetic blood, or the Cushitic blood. For those that try to say that they can't be African, right? Or even if you're a Moor, Moor is all encompassing because Moors were all over the earth. Now, if you're talking about Morocco as a nation, that's a people. If you're talking about a Moor is a person. It is a status. A person carries a status. And if you're not careful, if you're not talking about a natural person, they might not even be talking about male or female, because females, when these laws were made, were not considered to be a person because they had no status. Said slavery is a mindset, sure. That's why they keep everybody enslaved, to where we're fighting once against each other rather than comprehending what slave is, because slavery, once again, starts with your debt. If you are in debt to somebody and you have no status, right, then you are a slave to wherever you are. This is why people do this weird thing, even in the Bible, right? Where they'll do some stuff will be like Proverbs 22, verse 6 and 7, or they'll only give you verse 6, right? Because everybody's always incomplete on whatever side they're trying to do, because they're trying to just get their truth rather than the truth. They're trying to get their story or even his story rather than the story, right? So Proverbs 22, verse 6 goes like this. Everybody always says, train up a child in the way they go, so when they grow old, they will not depart from it. Question though, is that what the context is? Make sure you whoop your child. Make sure if they do something bad, make sure they're disciplined. No, no, no. The context is actually you got to add verse 7, because verse 7 says that the the borrower will always be a slave to the lender. So train them correctly. So put the two verses together. Train up your child in the way that they should go, as far as knowing how to make sure that they're not in debt to anybody. So when they grow old, they will not depart from it and will never be a slave to the lender. Right? And even the word slave, even back then, by the way, is not even the same word, because there wasn't a word called slave yet. And slavery was not chattel slavery. It was not based upon your skin color, because your skin color should not determine your status. Right? But people are so busy trying to fight that they can't hear. This is why, if according to Western law, according to law, if you want to just go into law, if we want to just be honest about how law works, right? If you want to go into law, if you're black, now look, I don't mind being called black, but I'm talking about on paper. If I fill something out, if I'm going to the bank, if I'm going to fill out something, whatever it is, on paper, by law, black, African American, colored, and Negro are all considered to be artificial people. Did you catch that? This is law. Black people, or a black person, because black ain't a people. So a black person, a colored person, a person who considers himself Negro, right, and an African American person are all considered to be artificial people by law. They have no rights. See, but we don't educate. First of the 5 E's is educate. If nobody's taught you this, read your Bible. For those of you who like your Bible, read your Bible to bless you, because all sovereignty, all law is connected to spirits, spiritual stuff, whether you like it or not, and it's connected to spirits too. That's how law works. You think the separation of church and state means that there's no spirituality when it comes to law. All law is based off of, because the way law works, it's kingdom law. We're supposed to be married to the creator. That's marital law. But then you're supposed to have something called universal law. Universe literally means right? Like uno, stuff like that, right? Uno, means one, and verse means a sentence. So a universe is a single spoken sentence. So universal law is the law of the one who spoke the single spoken sentence. That's how law works. So when you talk about universal law, you cannot have universal law without actually going to the person who spoke it into existence. After that, then it's called natural law. Natural law is the law of nature. What is the law of nature? The law of nature is the law of what is natural, considering what the person spoke in universal law. So if you're dealing with natural law, come on, somebody, right? We arguing. Let's educate now. We're so busy arguing. Let's educate. So if it comes to natural law, you hear what I'm saying? If you're talking about natural law, this is how it works, right? If I go outside and I get some dandelion because I want to make sure that we have something bitter to help us with our digestion and our blood and with parasites, right? And I go outside and gather some dandelion. I can't just go outside and be like, hey, I'm going to patent this. This is Kofi's dandelion. Nobody's selling this right now. Nobody's ever patented it. This is Kofi's dandelion. Why can I not patent it? I cannot patent it because it is it is not modified. It's in the natural law of the one who spoke the universe into existence, universal law. And therefore, since we are married to that person, marital law, we cannot go above that, because that's not how the kingdom operates, kingdom law. Therefore, I am not allowed to patent it. But if I go outside and I modify it, if I take it and I bring it inside and I go ahead and make a formula and I only focus on one part to where it's not a hole, but now it's got holes in the side, therefore it has side effects, because everything that's modified has side effects, because if it's not whole, things can come out and leak on the side. Think about it like that. That helps you to think about it. So now, therefore, this thing that has side effects, I can patent it. Why? Because it is not inside of its nature. Therefore, in substantive law, which comes next, I can substantiate my claim to say that I own it, whether I be private law, or I'm giving it to the public law, or whether I'm trying to use it in certain ways, procedural law, or whether I'm trying to even make sure that there's certain things that can be done with it so that somebody can win a case, or whatever, remedial law, or even if I want to talk about what attracts people to it or doesn't attract people to it, law of attraction. We can keep on going, or we want to talk about the times that these things were first created, right back in times that go way past what y'all think law started in, right? That's law first mentioned. However you want to look at it, I've got to deal with it within what it is. But see, if nobody educates you in that, If nobody educates you in that, you're arguing something I'm not arguing, right? Your whole prism of black versus white is not my problem because I'm separate from your system. Ain't no black person or white person determining how I live because I'm private anyways in how I live. So I don't care. I'm not gonna say I don't care at all, but it's not my concern what Joe Biden does because I'm separated from that system. It's not my concern what Trump does because I'm separated from this. It's not my concern what Obama does. My concern is the actual person who wants to become a people and separate from that system. I want to give them tools that they can separate. So you're having a different conversation. You hear me talking about chattel slavery and don't realize what they did to these group of people even before they did it to us. Guess who they started off with? They started off with the Irish. And by the way, the only reason why you call slaves slaves is because they started doing it to the Slavs first. See, so the only reason why you rewrote these words in your Bible is because, like you say, slaves, but they didn't have the concept of slavery that you have in the Bible. Even the ones that were really wicked, they treated slaves better than what you treat them as. Why? But the only reason you think of slaves in the term that you do, you don't even realize they did this to the Slavs, they did this to the Irish, they did this to, they did this to this tribe and that tribe and that tribe, and then eventually they did it to people based off of color. And now that it's been there, because racism is a huge issue now. It kind of sort of always was, but it wasn't exactly what you consider to be race. Matter of fact, here we go again. Educate. Let's educate. Where does the term race even come from? And why do you think about race having to do with color? Who is they? Anybody who's decided to have you and I to have a conversation or teach you and I that race is real, at least the way that you think it. Anybody. Where did the term race even come from? Before eugenics, because eugenics exists after race is introduced. Eugenics just takes the thought process of race to the next level. Where did race even start? See, we don't even know. What is a race? If I were to come to your child, think like a child, right? This is why a child shall lead them. Let a child's mindset encompass your body and your habits right now, right? Let that thought process of a child. Because if I go to my child and I say to him, son, we're going to have a race. He is not going to start thinking about color, although he knows that there are people who have literally told him and told his father and came on here and he's seen, while watching his father, he's seen people call his father the N-word and stuff like that. He knows it exists, right? He knows, he's seen what police officers have done to his people, even when his people haven't done anything, right? And I'm not talking about on the news. I'm talking about right in front of him, right? However, even with all that, if I go to my son and I say, son, let's have a race, what do you think he's going to say? What do you think he's going to think? You hear what I'm saying? And I grew up reading a lot of stuff from the Library of Congress. My father works for the Library of Congress still to this day. I grew up around congressmen, right? I know how some of that stuff works too. I was in the United States military, although I've decided to go ahead and just fully embrace my people. But hear what I'm saying, right? My son, if I say let's race or let's talk about race, he's not going to think black, white. Because race originally had nothing to do with black or white. Correct? Correct? You know what I'm saying? Race had originally nothing to do with black or white. Race had to do with competition. Now, here's the deal. The only reason why you consider race to deal with you as a person is because somebody started teaching you that you were an animal or that you came from animals. We got to educate. See, our 5 E's today is what? Educate, empathy, execute, edify, and elevate. And the reason why a lot of people cannot empathize or at least look at something through somebody else's lens or perspective, or even through a proper perspective rather than an improper perspective, is because you have not been educated correctly. We all have not been. Just because I know certain things now, and I've decided a long time ago as I was traveling, I was going places, and then I decided, let me go to places where my family is, people I've never met, introduce, sit down, go through the stuff, go through the tribes, learn the proper greetings, learn what they consider themselves to be before somebody else told me what I'm supposed to be, what they still consider themselves to be, even though they themselves have been manipulated through some of the same stuff, just in a different manner. See, but we got to educate. You think that race has to do with people because you consider yourself to be animals. That's where that came from. And if you don't know it, just because you're ignorant of it doesn't mean that that's not the undertone of the conversation or the overtone, whichever way you want to go. right? The reason why you think that you have a race or you're part of a human race is because you think that humans come from animals. That's where it came from. I'm going to prove it to you, and I'm going to even show you, right? I'm going to give you the receipt, but just roll with me for a second. Race is a competition, right? On your marks, get set, go. That's what race is. That's what a race is, right? Now, racism, the word ISM put on any word makes that word a system, right? Whether you're talking about it was systematically put in place or systemically. Systematically meaning somebody put it in place on purpose. Systemically means that it runs by itself. You don't have to do anything. Just like, hey, that train is never late. Like a dead clock is right twice a day. Even if you don't do anything, that system is going to keep on making sure that something about it continues to go. Whether you want to talk about the Willie Lynch letter, written of 1712 on Christmas Day, December 25th, 1712, which is what the first president's grandfathers would have been teaching them in Virginia, which is why you have the first 4 out of 5 presidents, if you consider George Washington to be your first president. The first 4 out of 5 presidents are all Virginia slave owners, right? But you don't know how this stuff goes together. And by the way, those slave owners didn't like you either, because in 1789 or 1791, take your pick, when you consider the United States of America to finally be a sovereign nation, right? Even then, only 6% of the people could vote, because only 6% were considered to be people, which means only 6% out of everybody who was an American was considered to be a people, a nation. So it goes deeper than just what you think, because a lot of white men that had money couldn't vote. You had to make a certain amount of money, and you had to have a certain amount of land in order to vote. So it goes past color, but all you hear is color, and you don't realize that in order to have chattel slavery as a system, you have to dupe everybody. You have to dupe the overseer, who lives worse off than the field slave, and definitely worse off than the house slave. You have to dupe him into thinking that even though he lives in worse situations, eats worse food than everybody else, you have to get him to believe that even though he doesn't do that well, even though that he's poor, he's better than somebody else because of the color of his skin. They had to trick everybody. They had to trick everybody. They had to lie to everybody, right? But whether you want to go ahead and do 1789, 1791, whichever one, they had to lie to everybody. But let's go back even still, right? Because there's something that's missing. You got race. See, we got to educate. You got race, which is a competition. When is the first time you think people started looking at color concerning competition? Because by these colonial constructs, black people competed against black people, and white people competed against white people, sure. And Asian people competed against Asian people, and Spanish people considered right, and natives competed against natives, sure. We're not going to act like none of that happened. But when do you think we started thinking about it as far as color concerning the competition or concerning the race? See, you're missing it if you think this is just me saying all white people are this or all black people, because I know that all skin folk ain't kinfolk. Just because you look like me doesn't mean that you are for me, right? How many people got parents that haven't shown up in your life? Just because I come from your blood doesn't mean that you hear what I'm saying, right? So the first time we're dealing with race being an issue as far as color is the Crusades. That's the first time. Now, we can say people having blue eyes and stuff like that. That goes back to the times of the Greeks. And by the way, the Greeks that were in power at that time, they look like me more so than they look like what you think Greeks look like today. Like that's documented. So people were doing stuff like that way back when, right? So you think that Hitler's the first person to talk about if you got blue eyes and blonde hair. They were doing that back then with the Greeks because they were trying to say, because their family had this stuff, the gods, they didn't use gods, because gods is a different thing. God is a Germanic version of what they worship, but the deists or the deities, or what you call gods today, they were like, oh, they favor us because of the way we look. You can tell they favor us. They started that, right? But as far as skin color, it's the Crusades. You know why? Because the Pope is supposed to be the vicar. He's supposed to be Christ on earth. He's supposed to be Christ incarnate. He's supposed to be an incarnation of Christ, right? So Christ keeps getting reincarnated in the Pope, in the Roman Catholic Church, when they vote a new one in. That's how that works. And he's supposed to be the King of Kings. Problem, though, is that the kings keep fighting each other and killing each other off. And the Pope is like, I can't control this anymore. So guess what he does? He uses scripture, violates, perpetrates, and tricks even his own people, who he was allowing to fight each other until he realized he can't control it anymore. He said, hey, look, you see those black and brown people over there who are in our land, because we're Christians and the Cristianos are more important than the people of color, or more important than the Israelites, or more important, because remember, Israel, they lost their way, because when Christ was killed by them, right, even though according to your canon, right, he laid down his life, was not killed, but nevertheless, right, because he was killed by them, then he must not, then that means that the promise is ours, the same stuff that you hear churches and stuff saying today. And he says, go over there and fight them in the name of Jesus. And the crusades start. And it even continues to a place to where when you get to the 1400s, look this up, right? Don't just believe what I'm saying because I'm saying it. Look these things up for yourself. In 1452, they start implementing something called the doctrine of discovery. So you got to educate in order to empathize. You can't empathize with somebody you don't know what you're talking about, right? So now you got to educate. So now 1452, why is that a big deal? 1452, doctrine of discovery. The doctrine of discovery says that if we come to your land and there's not a white Christian male on it, or it has not been started by a white Christian male, then we have the right to discover it. Because we're the only people that exist, because we're now God's people. That's what they did. We always go all the way back to Constantine. Constantine got okie doke too. If you really know how that worked, y'all go back to that. Like before Constantine, this stuff existed anyways. But he got the okie doke too. But let's fast forward, because people always go there, but people don't pay attention to stuff that's even closer to you. 1452, doctrine of discovery. So anywhere we go, and you're not a white Christian male, or wasn't started by a white Christian male, we have the right to be able to say, hey, guess what? Your stuff is our stuff, because you're not a people. Remember, in law, right? Remember, in law, a person can be a real person or an artificial person. The plural of person is persons, real persons or artificial persons. But if a group of people come together, they are considered to be a people. You must look at the language. They told you straight up that you were not a people. You are not a real person. So we have the right to discover your land, because the only real person is a white Christian male. That's what they did. And so that's where the doctrine of discovery comes from. So when you say, how can somebody come to your land and say that they discovered it? They started doing that through the doctrine of discovery. Now, when does the doctrine of discovery actually become official, though? Well, 1491, Christopher Columbus, the Moors, the last great Moorish king, from the times all the way going back to Carthage, finally the last great Moorish king in 1492, because everybody only goes to 700s to the 1400s, as if there were no Carthaginians. As if there were nobody of Yashrael, of Kanab, right? We act like those people didn't exist. But okay, the last Moorish king is defeated in 1491. And in 1491, what happens? Spain as a country exists for the first time. They had always been under African rule. They learned their language. That's why even the term negro or Negro that y'all try to say, well, it actually means this. Back then, they learned the term Negro from Africans, because Africans, West Africans specifically, called themselves Negroes in 4,000, 5,000 years ago. You think that Negro is a false term because of what Western society says. And yes, in Western law, if I do something in Western law, I shouldn't write down that I'm a Negro, or else they will try to take away my rights. But according to our people, Negroes go back thousands of years ago. And so I have no problem being Negro, even negus, Niger. These are terms that we use that people mispronounced or didn't even know what they meant, or made fun of us as. And then over time, they even lost, the people who were making fun of us even lost track of where it came from. So you're having conversations about race uneducated. So it became a competition. And you know why? Because Isabel and Ferdinand somewhat, but Isabella, the queen, 1491, she's finally established as the queen, because she had more land than Ferdinand did. So when they finally beat the Moors out and got the last third of the land, she was able to take it and basically become the queen over it. She looked up to the people who fought in the Crusades. And what did the people in the Crusades do? They fought against black and brown people. And the black and brown people who were natives of Israel, the ones who hadn't scattered all the way out, and the black and brown people who lived around there, and some of them lived in Spain and some of them lived in Portugal, guess what they were called? So you don't want to go there because y'all think that people are crazy when they say this, and you try to say that people are racist. I'm just giving you historical fact, and I'm not using this to say that people are better than somebody else. I'm trying to tell you what their thought process was. Those people that they found, they called them Negroes. They knew about Moors for sure, right? But there were certain people there that were called Negroes. This is why even on maps up to the 1700s, not our maps, but Eurocentric maps, if you look at West Africa, they have a place called Negro land. Right? That's where my tribe is from, where Negro land hits Guinea, and where you get to the Bread Coast, the Ivory Coast, the Gold Coast, and also the Slave Coast. And when you go to my people who live in the Slave Coast, when you go over there to places like Elmina Castle and other places over there, you'll discover that on those ancient maps, European maps in the 1700s, they have things on those maps that say, this is the lost tribe of Judah. They'll say this is the kingdom of Judah. They'll say these are the scattered Israelites. And those Israelites were called Negro. Now you say, oh, no, here you go. You on your Kanye stuff. You on your Kyrie stuff. You manipulating stuff. I got receipts for you. Study for yourself, right? Because all you got to do is look up what a Negro was in Spain and in Portugal, and look up. Y'all think the Spanish Inquisition was about anybody that wasn't a Christian. The first part of the Spanish Inquisition is turning Negroes into Christians. And people can laugh whatever they want. I'm trying to tell you. Look it up. First part of the Spanish Inquisition is about turning Negroes into Christians. And by the way, they describe the Negroes, even in some of your modern books, they're described to you as something called Sephardic Jews. What is a Sephardic Jew? I'm trying to tell you how race started being about color, because race is supposed to be a competition. But you haven't studied. You haven't been educated. You see? See, so there were a lot of Negroes who were already in Western Africa who, as Moors, had already came up to places like Spain and had already came up to places like Portugal. This is stuff you can look at. By the way, go visit Portugal when you get a chance, because some people still laughing and stuff like that. You're so used to go to Portugal, right? I'm not talking about something that, no, go to Portugal and ask them to see ghettos. You know about ghettos in Germany. And you think ghettos only have to do with the modern Jew. Go to Portugal and ask them to see if you can go see. Now, you can't go inside them anymore, but they have these old school things. They look like projects. They're gated off now and everything. They're boarded up. And guess who lived in those projects? Or guess who lived in those ghettos? Sephardic Jews. Now, do some research on Sephardic Jews, because they'll tell you what they look like. They'll say Sephardic Jews were swarthy. What does the term swarthy indicate? You see what I'm saying? People laughing. They don't know what this stuff is. Right? Go and look up. They'll tell you they were swarthy. Swarthy means they look like this. They said they had locks. Their hair looked like this. They forced them to start putting on black hoodies. And right, so some of y'all wear hoodies, but you can say that somebody else forced that. But watch this. They say the people in black hoodies, they were the males were really attracted to women. Why? Because bisexuality was something that was common over there. But for our people, we didn't do that. Right? They'll tell you that these people who had hoodies on used to be on the street corner, and there would be people who would play music, and there would be somebody putting poetry over music. Does that sound like something that happens today with your people still? You said it's fake because you won't go ahead and look it up. Read it. And I didn't write it, and my people didn't write it. Look at what the Spanish themselves say, the Portuguese. That's why I said, see, people who don't even want to look it up, I said, go over there and ask them. So when you get the chance, when you get your money together, travel over there and ask them specifically to take you over to the ghettos. See, people don't even want to do the research. I'm not talking about something that I heard about. Right? And on top of it, there's a great documentary on Tubi TV, Tubi. Look up Tubi TV, Tubi TV, right? And download it. It's free. You got to look at commercials, but download it. It's free. And listen, and go look for a series called Reclaiming the Throne. I think part 2 or part 3 will teach you about that. I think part 3 is when it really starts getting really heavy. So it's going to be kind of crazy. And they don't show gore, but the way they talk about it, the way they things they kind of show, it's going to be a little heavy for you, right? But and then research, because they're going to give you the books to read, and they're going to give you books because we know the way the West works, you don't believe people like myself as far as the Angelic Alliance or the historians of our people. So they're going to give you the people who you look up to, and you can listen to what they have to say. It's in part 3. Okay, thank you. Right. But go look up Reclaiming the Throne and then look at the book. They're going to give you the book titles. They're going to show you what the people look like. They're going to give you the names. They're going to tell all, and you go and you research for yourself and you tell me. But I'm telling you, when you get a chance to go to Portugal, you go over there, you ask them to take you over there. You ask them to take you over there. And you go look at it for yourself. When you go to Spain, ask them about what Sephardic Jews are. You hear what I'm saying? Like you're having a thing because you don't like what I'm saying, and I'm trying to tell you how they duped all of us into believing that color has to do with who you really are. Color indicates who I come from, sure. It's evidence that I come from somebody else, but color does not necessarily, I'm not saying I'm better or worse than anybody because of the color of my skin. Right. So, anyways, that's the story, not written by me, written by Spanish historians, written by Portuguese historians, written by English historians, written by Russian historians. Don't even get started about Russian historians telling you about those who were considered to be Jews there at first, and how Russia was actually for 500 years, at least a certain part of Russia was for 500 years considered to be a Israelite nation. We was all slaves, cool, and you'll still be enslaved. That's the part I'm trying to get you to see, is that what they did to one group of people as slaves, they're trying to do to everybody. So we're here on that. Let's agree, and let's get off of the whole thing of trying to be like, well, who cares about what slavery did? Because I don't care if you're black, I don't care if you're white, I don't care if you're in between. Whatever your situation is, guess what? All slave owners are bad, right? So if anybody's trying to enslave you, including the government, it's bad. That's my point. I know they're joined late, but I got to make sure I put it in there because people will not actually listen long enough to see if they actually might be able to catch something, right? So they describe Sephardic Jews to look like that. And they went to Negro land to get more slaves. And guess who Spain had to ask permission from, right? 1491, Spain finally becomes a country. Then they go to the Pope. And they ask permission to do what? I want to do what they did in the Crusades, and I want to go get slaves. I want to go get specifically Negro slaves. Here comes now somebody who doesn't like his own people, but is probably more like Ashkenazi anyways, and Cristobal Colon, who you call Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus, check out his diary, right? He says that at least from 1482, he had been trained on sailing by Africans, and Africans had told him about places that Negroes or places that people who would consider themselves Israelites or even a lot of West Africans have been using some kind of current to be able to go over to a place. And he considered this place to be called the land of Asherah or the land of Asherah. If you want to, because you don't know about lost books in your Bible, check out 2nd Esdras chapter 13, verses 40 through 45. That's 2nd Esdras, right? Esdras, 2nd Esdras, chapter 13, verses 40 through 45. Once again, that's going to be 2nd Esdras, chapter 13, verses 40 through 45. And you will discover that there were Israelites who, when they were captured by the Assyrians, never came back. When Yehoshua, or who you guys call Jesus, when he is born where there's only two to three tribes. Like there's a mix of Levites, but there's basically Levites, who you call Jews, or Yehovah or Yehovah or Judah. So Levites, Judah, and Benjamin, they're the only people that are still there. Everybody else is gone. And they've gone to a place where nobody has lived before. They decided to occupy somewhere different. They said, let us go to a place where nobody lives because we keep going back and getting ourselves in the same situation. Let's go somewhere else where we can start to do things the way Yehovah wants us to do. Yeah, we record these on YouTube. If you look up hashtag Find Kofi, we're not on as long as we normally are. So if you hang in there just a little bit, we'll put all our information up for you guys to go ahead and, if you want to text us, email us, look at different things we do in the community, look at things we do as far as class information, whatever the case might be, podcast stuff, meetups, etc. We'll put that stuff up at the end. But yeah, if you're looking for the YouTube channel, it's called hashtag Find, like you're looking for something, FIND, Kofi, KOFI. And that's the name of the YouTube channel. right? But yeah, so Christopher Columbus is looking for the land of Vestas. He says this to the Queen. The Queen knows what this is and says this to the Pope, because the Pope still is the King of Kings. He has to give permission to the Queen. The Queen has to give permission to Columbus, right? And then when Columbus leaves, who does he bring with him? When Columbus leaves, who does he bring with him? Question again. Question again. When they leave, who does Columbus bring with him to talk to the people that they're looking for? Who does Columbus bring with him to talk to the people that they're looking for? He brings a Hebrew interpreter. In the Hebrew interpreter, when you look up, this is all documented. When they get over to Hispaniola, which you now know as Hispaniola, you know as Dominicano y Haiti, right? When they get over there and they have a dialogue in Hebrew dialect, they tell them, "Oh yeah, we've known about West Africans and people for a long time. We've been mixing and matching, and a lot of us have had children with each other and all this stuff." How you doing, Brother Christopher? How you doing, Sister Tracy? How you doing, WCP? Right? And I'm sorry to everybody coming on, right, on all the platforms, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. We appreciate everybody's presence. Sorry, we're rolling a little bit right now, and I'm speeding a little bit. I'm kind of speedy sometimes, anyways, but especially today because we don't have as much time as we normally would. You said that's not true? Okay, look it up. Right? Especially even with people. See, the people, when I bring these people up, they're going to try to demean them, even though when other people were saying the same thing that didn't look like us, they didn't demean them. But when I give you some of these reference points, go look up Ivan van Sertima, Ivan van Sertima, IVANVANSERTIMA, and look up a book that he wrote about what before Columbus. And he took nothing more than what Eurocentric people believed. One of the guys gave him all the documentation and gave him all of the artifacts. All right, and he focuses more on the Olmec She, to be honest, right? But also, too, we don't talk about Mansa Musa and Mansa Musa's brother, who was king before him, who also was somebody who was around when the actual Muhammad, right? The Prophet Muhammad, he actually rolled with him. And a lot of people don't know that, like, those kings from Mali, they didn't stay on the throne to the end of their kingdom. They would actually leave and go somewhere else. Come to find out, there's somewhere else with Brazil. But people don't want to talk about that. People don't want to have honest dialogue. People don't want to look at what Mansa Musa himself says. He tells you that he didn't become king because his brother died. He tells you that his brother went west looking for land that everybody else would go to. And sure enough, we have evidence in Brazil and other places on the east coast of South America that these people were pulling up, including that they speak the same language. And this is before slavery. Yes, thank you. Yeah. Abu Bakr, right? And by the way, Abu Bakr and others are people, by the way, if you're going to talk about the Quran, because you don't know this, once again, educate. This is why we can't even get to the second E yet, empathize. This is why, right? Because the five E's we're really trying to talk about today is what? Educate, empathy, execute, edify, elevate. And we can't even get to a point to where we edify each other and elevate because you haven't been educated enough to empathize so that you can execute properly in your thought process. Like, this is stuff documented. We can just simply listen to the people, but instead we're so busy listening to somebody else tell us that what those people said, they didn't know what they were talking about. You have to ask yourself why you still think that people who actually had it's their story, why his story is more important than their story. Anyways, though, right? This is why educate is so important today. I don't know if we're even gonna get to the other E's today. I can't get to them tomorrow because tomorrow's Mother's Day, and I can't get to them on Monday because somebody's gonna be speaking, right? So maybe we come back to but see, you see how powerful just the educate part is? So here they are, they said, we go across, they're telling you to go across the water. And here are the people in Hispaniola who tell you, by the way, they tell them to the point to where if you want to look up something, because people still don't like what I'm saying as far as that, they say I'm trying to manipulate stuff, look up things as far as they even tell them the weapons. Christopher Columbus comes over and they're talking about trading this and that or whatever. He says that the people that are over here, they say we have these weapons called guanine weapons. Christopher Columbus, once again, he'd been sailing with Africans at least since 1482, learning. He says, guanine weapons. He says, what are guanine weapons? Yes, I am your style, right? We got that, right? Not trying to come against you, just letting you know we here on that, okay? Right? He says, we got guanine weapons. Christopher Columbus says, hold up, guanine weapons? Y'all can't have guanine weapons. He said, yeah, we got guanine weapons. If you don't know, guanine weapons, that's the name they use it over in Haiti. It's the same thing that they were using over in West Africa. That and they so when they took back slaves, because that's what they came for, they asked permission to go get slaves. So when they took back Negroes as slaves, they looked for the family, they found the family, the people, they took back weapons, they took back other things, and they actually had the weapons studied in Spain and in the Vatican. And when they studied both, guess what they discovered? They discovered that the guanine weapons made in Haiti and the guanine weapons made in West Africa are the same weapons, down even to the metallurgy, including the percentage of metals that's in them. They made them the same exact way when they forged them. Run tell that, go look that up and tell me I'm a lie. You see what I'm saying? But you won't listen because you don't want to be educated. How do you ever empathize with another culture if you cannot be educated by the people of that culture? Had the same weapons, use the same, language, even though they had different dialects now, but use the same language. And as much as y'all don't want to hear this, the Spanish and the Vatican recognize them as the same people, as far as the same people who were considered to be Negroes. And once again, look up a Negro for them. That's a Sephardic Jew. Sephardic Jews are swarthy. Same connection, same people, same hair, same language, same weapons. But you say they're not the same. See, they knew they were the same because they were looking for those people to enslave. By the way, why would you look to enslave these people? Well, once again, the Pope said, when we go to war, going back to what? Going back to the Crusades, those black and brown people, they messed up anyways. We're the real chosen people. Now, we're the Christians. The Christians are the chosen people because those Israelites, they messed up over there. They went to enslave them. They had to make it work by law. 1452, Doctrine of Discovery. Now, remember, I told you this started. Why did I start this off? Remember, 1452, Doctrine of Discovery started. 1491, that's when the last Moorish king is defeated. 1492, Christopher Columbus sails the ocean blue. 1493, the Doctrine of Discovery becomes official. Why? Because in 1492, we found who we were looking for. So now in 1493, we've got to make it official that anywhere we go, we as Christians, Christian white males, if we show up to your land and establish it, it means that it belongs to us because we discovered it. Right? That's law. So now let's keep on going. Because remember, we said, well, what is race? We got to educate you on race because everybody's lost. Everybody's lost. What is race? Race used to be a competition. We need to become about color, where we can see here, this is where it starts. But now you got to get to somebody named Carl Linnaeus. Shabbat Shalom, Minister Shante. Now you got to get to Carl Linnaeus. Now we got to go to Carl Linnaeus. So you're not educated. You don't know who Carl Linnaeus is. But let me introduce him to you real quick. He's a person that starts saying that race competition has to do with animals. Animals are in competition of one another, and they have to outcompete each other to be able to live. Now we're starting to get somewhere as far as even where your evolutionary thought process comes from. Right? Carl Linnaeus is using all this different theology and all this different Scientology and all this other stuff. And he's saying this is where it comes from. Right? So now Carl Linnaeus starts saying, well, you know what? Human beings are racist too. Right? Not R-A-C-I-S-T, but R-A-C-E-S. They are races as well. So Carl Linnaeus says, yes. So, and you can look this up for yourself. People don't be believing me, right? Google is free. Your library is free. Right? Read your Bible, will bless you. Read your canon, will bless you. Whatever you look at, right? But stop looking at this false terminology and actually look up things and words within their proper perspective. We don't want to give context without facts, and we shouldn't give facts without context. Contextual facts is what we're looking for. The only reason you believe that there's a such thing as a human race is because you think that humans come from animals. Observe, Carl Linnaeus says specifically, he says, white people are on top, native indigenous to Americas, right, or next. Then he says Asian people are after that. And then he says that black people are in the bottom. He gave them Latin terms, of course, because, if it's in Latin, it's science. Because the Romans, they like Greek language, and they like Latin language. So since the Romans established that those who were still romantic, the word romantic literally means Roman antics. So he said, you can go ahead and just keep on doing the same thing, right? We'll just keep the same thing moving. And he used the Roman antics, right? That's why some of y'all think it's romantic to have candlelit dinners, but poor people couldn't afford light like that. So if you could have a candle at night and actually see your food, you were doing something big. That's why it was romantic. It was a really big deal. We're gonna eat food today with light. You should never eat food in darkness. You know what I'm saying? You should always see what you're eating. But for them, that was romantic. You think it's romantic because you think it's nice. No, for them, that was a big deal. And hey, how you doing, Pastor? That was a big deal, right? So when you even use these terms, romantic, this and that, you don't even know what they mean. Your government is romantic. Anyway, so now we get to a place to where Carl Linnaeus has laid this out. And guess who's going to come up as a disciple somewhat of Carl Linnaeus and change the game up? Guess who's going to change the game up for y'all? Y'all thought that evolution, this and that. Guess who's going to come and change the game and now take what Carl Linnaeus did to the next level? And the person who was talking about eugenics, I know it's been a while, but hang in there because now we're finally about to get to what you were talking about. Who's going to come and change the game? As far as what Carl Linnaeus said, and because he said people were races because they came from different races of animals. Who's gonna come and change the game? Charles Darwin. And people don't even know it because you don't like to research. And it's part of the title is actually missing here because you should have the theory of evolution as part of the title, but people don't like you to realize and recognize it's a theory. So I'll just give you this one so we don't have to argue over that part. I just want you to see what you're arguing, where your arguments come from. And some of you say you don't believe in this stuff, but you carry the same stuff. Some of you believe in it, but don't realize what you believe in. Charles Darwin writes a book called The Origin of Species. It really should say The Origin of Species, the theory of evolution, but let's just read what it says. The origin of species by means of natural selection or the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life. And when you look down after it says his name, which by the way, the only degree Charles Darwin ever got was in he went to school to be a preacher. So he didn't really know about this other stuff anyways, right? These are observations of somebody. This is his religion showing up because his daddy was a preacher, but also didn't like black people. His uncle, who influenced his life greatly, was somebody who didn't like people of color or really anybody that he didn't consider to be part of his group of people for real, whether white, black, whatever. But his uncle was somebody who hated the concept of deities and also was somebody that was so like depressed and so much into like overindulging himself on things. He was so big and fat even that they had to cut a piece of the table out so that he could sit at the table with everybody else when they ate. But this is considered to be stuff they taught you. And this is 1859. What's about to happen in 1860? You're about to have people start leaving the Union. You're about to get into something called not the Doctrine of Discovery, sorry, not Lost Cause. You're about to get into something, Rudyard Kipling was really big on it. The one who wrote the Jungle Book, which y'all love to watch and stuff too. Don't know, but that's a part of a more sinister book to make certain people look like trash and say that the race and animals and all that stuff are better. And this group of people came from this race. What is it? Not the Doctrine of Discovery, not eugenics. We're not at eugenics yet. I'm sorry, y'all. I even did a whole thing talking about like a 5-piece. We talked about a 5-piece. You had the Lost Cause, you had Doctrine of Discovery, you had they used it as an excuse to be able to say we should take over the West. What is that called? If it's important, it'll be given to us. They use it as an excuse to say this is why we're wiping all the natives off. Well, anyways, if it comes to me, it comes to me. But anyways, at the same time, this is when this is being written. Manifest Destiny. Thank you. Manifest Destiny. Right? So this is all around the same time. Manifest Destiny. Right? And he writes a book to tell you. And by the way, remember I said Carl Linnaeus was mentioned? I mentioned that name, Carl Linnaeus. People say, well, no, you're making stuff up. Look at the names that are on here when you go down from Charles Darwin's name. It'll say he's a fellow of the Royal. So that means people who are royalty back him up. Geological, that means people who are into geology. Geologists back this nonsense up. That was their goal, was to use geology to try and say that this was going on. And then it even says Linnaean, people who believed in Carl Linnaeus, that there were races, competitions between animals, and that therefore there were animal races, and therefore humans came from certain animals, and they had races, and therefore like certain races. And Charles Darwin takes it to the next level, and he actually extends it. He makes more, because there's not just only white and red and yellow and black people, but we must admit that there's different versions of them. So maybe they all come from animals, right? And he writes out this whole book. And here's where eugenics comes in. His cousin, like this is wild, right? Some people miss this. His cousin comes in and says, man, you know what? I like what you're doing, cuz. You know what? Like, and he looks up to him. He's a younger cousin. His sister, his cousin, right? His sister would marry Charles Darwin. So Charles Darwin even marries his own cousin. Charles Darwin is actually known as a lunatic, not because he was crazy, by the way. I'm talking about he literally worshipped the moon once a month. That's what lunatics originally were. They were people who worshiped the moon. They were considered to be crazy. So that's why you think a lunatic is crazy today, right? but right, and that's Ishtar, Easter, and all that stuff. That's where you get that from, right? And once again, what is Charles Darwin? He went to school because he was a Christian preacher. That's what he wanted to be. Somebody who worshiped the moon. Ishtar, Easter. Okay? So now you have Charles Darwin who writes that book, and his cousin likes what he's doing. He writes a book on eugenics to validate what his cousin, Charles Darwin, said, to validate what Carl Linnaeus said, to validate what they started doing with the doctrine of discovery. And if y'all don't mind being careful about the curse words in the comments, because we got people of different ages. If that's too much for you guys, well, thank you for being on. Appreciate you. Right. But I'm just trying to tell you, that's like, we don't know this stuff because you haven't been educated. So when I talk about slavery, I'm talking about everybody had to be duped. Black and white alike. I said something earlier. Y'all missed it, right? The overseer, the white overseer, which is why you have overseers in your churches still to this day. There were big seats. That's why you go to some of these churches, they got big seats nobody sits in, right? You ever seen some of those? The overseer was somebody who was supposed to always represent the master's, what the master wanted. And but the overseer, right, the white people who were around, the only thing they had over the slave was that they were white. I need you to see how they did not educate anybody. They educated all of us to be duped. Are you ready for this? The overseer, hear what I'm about to tell you. Don't miss this. This is why when people are so busy saying, oh, you hate white. No. I need you to recognize that there are people over you that want you to think that because they're white, they love you. And they don't. Just like there's some of our people that want you to think that they go in the government, they get voted in, and because they're black, they're going to look out for you. And they don't. Or you think that because a Spanish woman gets voted in and she's going to start making sure she takes care of Spanish people and she gets voted in, and she does not. The reason why she does not is because that you are not who she is supposed, or she is not supposed to work for you. She has a goal. She's supposed to make sure she supports and defends the Constitution of the United States, and not you. Against all enemies, both foreign, so if they don't live there, and domestic. If you're going to try to rise up, she's supposed to help to keep you down too. That's the way it works, whether you like it or not. I don't care who it is. Trump doesn't work for you. He works for the union. Even the stuff that he does is polarizing. It works for the union and not you. I need you to comprehend this about the overseer. I'm going to say it again. The overseer lived in a house that was often worse off than the house that the field slave would live in. The overseer definitely lived worse off than the house Negro. This is why he didn't like the house Negro even more than he didn't like the field Negro. The field Negro had more than the overseer did. The only difference was the overseer was white. And so he was allowed to beat them and yell at them and watch over them. And so he thought that that gave him power. But the reality is he had less power than anybody else. The only thing he was white, but in his mind, he had been enslaved already to think that white meant something. He thought that white made him better. Everybody had to get tricked to make this work. Slave patrolman. Go look up a police badge. Type in police badge slave patrolman when you get a chance on Google image. Do a Google image search and type in police badge, slave patrol badge. They have the same badges. They came from the same people. The only reason why the police officer thinks he's better than you is because he has a badge that says that he's allowed to go ahead and look down on you. That's the system he's in. He thinks he's protecting and serving you, but he needs to recognize that his oath does not say protect and serve the people. His oath says to make sure that the union and the state is taken care of. They make an oath, by the way, right? When you join the military, I did the same thing, didn't know any better. When you join the military, when you join the police force, when you become the governor, when you become the council person, when you become the president, whatever your situation is, you make an oath. Does anybody know what an oath is? So you don't realize the religion you're in when you say you're in the United States. What is an oath? By law, by legalisms. This legalese. Guess what an oath is? By definition, go Google legal definition of oath. And you'll discover that an oath is a promise to God or a promise to a deity. So now you have to ask yourself, who is God? Because you think that God means what you think it means. On your money, there's an oath. In God we trust. Who is God? See, you think I'm lying. Look up, I'm telling you, Google, not Google, I'm talking about Google, a legal definition. Look up what law, go study law, or go look up what the law definition says from universities who are very highly reputable concerning the teaching of law. It's an oath. An oath is a promise to a deity, and you got to find out who God is. God bless America. Who is that? Cash rule everything around me. Yeah. They designed it that way so that the overseer would be disgruntled enough to hate the slaves and mistreat them. Yeah. So everybody got to get duped in this thing to make it work. Why do you think feminism exists now? Even though feminism doesn't even support all women, it does not. Because feminism is around because you had women who were not considered to be people, who were told, keep hanging in there. Eventually, we'll let you have property. We'll let you have this. We'll let you have right to vote. We'll let you have blah, blah. We'll let you have that. And so that's their fight. But the same feminists were the same people that would stomp on your children because they were tired of seeing your children were coming from the slave master who would SA, right? Who would grape your women, and they were tired of seeing little babies running around. That's why they had to have something called the Casual Killing Act. The Casual Killing Act, because it was getting casual to see a woman stomp a little young baby out. That's why they came up with the law. Look at it's on the books. Casual Killing Act. I didn't write it. Because these women were so upset that it started manifesting where they were murdering people. Because they kept being in league with these people trying to support these men and be their wives, and they weren't getting what they're supposed to. So the feminist movement, if you listen carefully, they're not out here saying we want to be treated correctly. They're out here saying we want everything that you get to do. So if they want everything that the white men, if that's what it is, because that's what they'll tell you, the patriarchy is only about the white men who have the power. Okay, well, if you want everything the white men have, then that means that you're going to have everything, including how you treat people, correct? They don't even have the right mindset of what they're fighting. If you want to talk about the patriarchy, stop asking for what the patriarchy has and saying you should be able to treat people like they treat them and leave the system alone. And even in the women's suffrage movement, go back and look at Susan B. Anthony, who everybody loves. Susan B. Anthony said, she was asked, hey, will you support the right for Black people to vote? And she said, I'd rather get my right arm than to see a Black beast vote before me. Thank you, Minister Shantae. She put it in the comments for us. Oh, there's a definition: a solemn, usually formal calling upon God or a God to witness to the truth of what one says, or to witness that one sincerely intends to do what one says. And that's a Merriam-Webster definition. But that's what an oath is. So when somebody makes an oath, you're talking about an oath, you're talking about a pledge, you're talking about a promise to God. Now you got to figure out who your God is. Is your God George Washington? That obelisk? If you know what Washington, D.C. is, and you know who Columbia is, and you know where Columbia sits, and you know that no building can be built higher than Columbia, then you in a religion that you don't even want to be no part of. You said I don't blame her. I never said I don't blame anybody. What you talking about? Right. Before you come in here cussing people out. I don't know what that's about. Maybe you misheard something. I didn't even use that terminology. At least not today. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Not even at all today. Right. Oh, okay. To say I didn't know, but yeah, okay. But anyway, sorry for any misconception. But so yeah, so now we get to all that. So see, look, can you see now we got 5 E's? I'm not even going to be able to get really deep into the other ones, but hopefully you see how even just one of the E's affects everything. The 5 E's, which we've been trying to talk about, is what is educate, empathy, execute, edify, and elevate. Educate, empathy, execute, edify, and elevate. Once again, we're talking about 5 E's that you must know. If you're going to make change, you got to first educate, have empathy, execute, edify, and elevate. And people want to be elevated, but you have no education. Elevation comes out of education. I sound like my man, oh, I can't remember the name, Conscious Lee, Brother George. But but before I get to elevation, see, we got to have a conversation, because see, educate. Now, next comes empathy. Reason why you can't even empathize, reason why some people can't even hear what I'm saying, is because you haven't been educated enough. Some of you haven't even been educated about who you are. Why do you call yourself an American? I mean, we could get into some really deep esoteric stuff. We could get into the psychology. We could get into your marriage, relationship, stuff like that. We could go there. But let's just deal with something simple. Why do you call yourself an American? There's only two types of Americans that have ever existed. Which one are you? And why would you want to be the one that you identify with more than likely? See, the first definition of American is a copper-colored person, indigenous from the Americas, or indigenous to the Americas, excuse me, copper-colored person, indigenous to the Americas. Second definition is a fake version or a fake citizen. Why would you want to be? Which one do you identify with? Number one. Number two, what are you on paper? See, you can't even empathize with others, because for real, how can you empathize with somebody else and you don't have no empathy for yourself because you have not been educated on who you are? How do you empathize with yourself? And thank you for the love, appreciate it. And how you doing? Please check out Urban Royalty ATL when you get a chance. Right? How do you empathize with others and you don't know who you are? Can you see the problem? I've said some things on here that some of y'all never heard before, and this is your story. How do you empathize with somebody else? Some people on here have come on here and will quickly try to deny and be against anything that I might say. Try to deny and be against everything and anything that I've said, and because you won't even be educated enough to be able to see why I'm saying what I'm saying and still empathize. Because see, those of you who think that I hate you because of the color of your skin, you've missed the whole point, because you haven't listened long enough, or you don't have an ear to hear. And look, sometimes if you don't have an ear to hear, hey, this pearl might not be for you. I'll say that nicely. How you doing, Reginald? If I didn't say so already, this pearl might not be for you. And that's okay. Not every pearl is for every creation. Not all, like, matter of fact, pearls don't get received well by some. So I'm not tossing this to everybody. I've said this plenty of times. What I'm saying, not everybody gonna catch. This is not for everybody. There are people who have literally listened to us say, I love you, and tried to lie. And I had to go to legal TikTok and get on them because people lied and said, because I was saying I love you, I must be saying that I only love Black people. Like, some of y'all got problems. This is why some of your relationships don't work, because you can't empathize, because you're not even educated. See, in my culture, you have to be a husband and wife before you even get married. In your culture, you walk down the aisle and hope that you learn what a husband and wife is. And look, to each their own. If that's what you do, fine. But I'm just going to tell you, for us, it don't work that well, because we need to make sure our little boys and little girls are being trained to be husbands and wives. So by the time they get to be husbands and wives, they don't have to go on 55 dates. They've learned about themselves. They've been protected. They get rewarded for being themselves. They get to be about their own culture. They get an inheritance. They're able to start their own businesses. They're able to do a lot of different things. They're able to make sure that they know what it is. They've seen mothers and fathers operate together. So by the time they get in position to become one with somebody else, they've seen it so many times. See, a lot of y'all have never even seen people be one like that, and definitely haven't seen it in a righteous manner. How do you become royalty and you can't empathize with yourself? See, a king or a queen, royalty, we must be able to make sure that we're able to speak something. And see, in our belief system, in our culture, because y'all got this thing twisted, y'all do somebody else's culture. In my culture, this is how it works. In your culture, you think that kings and queens are supposed to rule over people as commoners. In my culture, I'm supposed to lead over an environment because everybody in my environment is a king or queen. So in your culture, you might hear something and not get it. You might hear the poor will be with you always, and you think that the poor are just some poor common folk, and they should just be happy that you toss something out. But see, in my culture, when I hear the poor will be with you always, it's a sad moment because it means that the person who should be elevated to my level is never elevated because something's going on to where they're suffering through some things that they shouldn't be suffering through. And so I should be on the front lines to ensure they're eating. See, everything's culture. Everything's contextual. Y'all like to be right instead of righteous. You know what I'm saying? And that's you're having issues. If you want to win an argument, win an argument. But while you winning arguments, people still are not eating. While you're winning arguments, people still aren't being taught anything. While you're saying that your version of what society is the only version, there are people out there that are still killing each other. While you're busy trying to say that there's all these big, huge walks. Like I talked to somebody, we have people that are in Chicago. So I reached out to somebody in Chicago because all the stuff that I'm hearing on the news, right? And I was getting ready to speak about this, and that Holy Spirit said, you know what? Call so-and-so. Or I texted them rather, text so-and-so and ask them, are they okay? You've been hearing some things about what's going on. And I did so. And guess what they said? Oh yeah, like there's some things that have happened here and there, but for real, it's really kind of blown out of proportion. It's not really what you think it is. And that stuff is more set on like in one place. And it's more like when they act like it's thousands of people, it's more like 4 or 5 people kind of did something that was a little off. Oh, okay. I'm glad to hear it. See, so I don't need to go and listen to the news and watch y'all fight over all this stuff and try to say this is a Republican issue, Democrat issue, and Walmarts are leaving because y'all looted them and stuff like that. I don't have to listen to any of that. I heard from the person that lives there and goes through this stuff every day and was like, yeah, it's not what you think. It's not what they're talking about. See, but you don't know how to empathize. See, I needed to be educated. First things first. See, educate is the first one. Second is empathize. See, once I educate and once I deal with educate, and then the second one, empathy. Third one up is execute. See, I was able to execute now. Now I can tell you, oh, okay, yeah, like this is what's going on. And if I need to send something over there, I know this is this and this that, right? Like I know now because I got educated on it. Now I'm able to empathize with the person who's there. And so now I can execute properly. A lot of you can't execute properly or you execute each other because you're so busy trying to win. Who cares if you win if the people over there are going through something terrible? Who cares if you win if the people over there aren't going through something terrible? I'd rather just know what their experience is and they can go ahead and tell me how to execute. I've been educated. I can now empathize and now I can execute. Y'all are so busy executing each other because you must win. The Republican Party must win. The Democratic Party must win. The Green Party, the Libertarian, the Communist, the Black Panther, the this, the that. Look. Once again, if babies are starving, I don't need you to tell me whose fault it is. Tell me where to send the money. Let me say it like that, right? You missing the point. And if they keep starving, even when I send the money, then tell me how to make sure that we set up an institution there and let them be in charge of it and make sure it's righteous when it started and put it in some kind of trust where they can't even finesse it if necessary, so that they can make sure that it keeps on being taken care of correctly. Then I can execute properly. You're not executing properly because you're so busy trying to win. Stop trying to win, especially stop trying to win against people that must always be right, right? Sometimes you're the problem because you must always be right. Be righteous. I don't care if you win. Like, I'm done with winning. I've made of myself no reputation. Call me whatever you want, do this or whatever. I'm not part of your system anyways. And at the end of the day, if you guys didn't hear another thing from me in public, I believe that the Most High is going to take care of my family and I anyways, right? So I don't care about winning, right? You do what you do. I want my people who are, especially those who want to be called by his name, but even my people in general, I want to make sure we take care of all of them to the best of our ability. I didn't say I can't heal the world. I wish I could. That's why y'all should be taking care of your part of the world. But I will help out as much as I can. We'll send this. We'll travel here. We'll go over there. We'll talk to you. We'll do life coaching. We'll do marital coaching. We'll make sure your eating habits are better. We'll give you natural medicine. We'll do this. We'll try to establish this, establish that. Thank you for the love. Appreciate it. We'll do all. But I know I can't save everybody. But for those people that are the people that I have been allowed to be over the environment that they have decided to join me in, they are all royalty and they will all be respected. And I will empathize, right? But if you're going to come into this too, as a group of people, you must what? You must be educated. You must have empathy. Now you must execute properly. Now, once we start executing properly, the fourth E, so we have education, we have empathy, we have execute. Now the fourth one is edify. Now we can build you up. We've been building the foundation, but we still haven't even gone above ground yet. We've just been trying to educate. See, this is all happening underground. This isn't even, you're not even seeing the house yet. You're not even seeing the skyrise yet. This is just underground. We try to make sure you educate it. And then while that's happening, we're trying to mix into the mixture, so to speak, to the concrete mixture, if you will. We're trying to get something concrete. We got to get this education getting, and this empathy's there. And now you know how to execute. So now that it's time for you to push above ground, right? We're trying to get the roots together. So now that it's time for the blade of grass to stick up, start being the bamboo shoot to stick up. Well, once it starts sticking up, it takes 5 years for the bamboo to start moving. But once it starts moving, it's extremely fast. And as it starts shooting up, first things first, we want to make sure that people know, okay, once this bamboo starts shooting up, I hope you know that what's about to happen, right? Once this bamboo starts shooting up, guess what's about to happen? You need to make sure that now you edify. It's time to build. It's time to build up. It's time to build upon things. It's time to build up your business and her business and his business and the child. And it's time to start educating. See, education. See, your children are educated at school too much. They need some homeschooling. This is why we do Shabbat school on Saturdays. This is why at 11 a.m. we started making sure that we have a school for our children every Saturday, right? We got to make sure we start teaching our children. Even if you don't believe what we believe, even if you don't believe everybody's canon, I'm here to tell you the United States corporation out there, and yes, it's not a country, it's a corporation, 28 USC 3002-15A decrees. That's United States code, that's United States law, decrees and declares that this is not a country, right? It's because a state is a country. So you have 50 states united to make sure, and they use federal law and to dictate some of the things that go on. And when they do that, that is not a country, that is a corporation. That's why you have a president over your corporation. Right. And you got to stop allowing the corporation to educate, right, your children, because they don't empathize with you. They empathize with the corporation. And you got to stop allowing them to execute like the corporation does. They got to execute how your people execute. Once we get to that point, right? Once we get to that point, then you got to get to a place of, all right, now I can start edifying. And then the last E is what? The last E is elevate. Now we can elevate. Now we can raise you up. Now we can get higher and higher and higher, right? But you see how much it took. You see how much it took. That first E is a doozy, isn't it? It took all that time for me to get past just the first one, education. Educate, because people don't want to be educated. Once again, even the most basic term of education, it literally means I'm reaching inside of you. I reach inside and I pull out your potential. I say, look at this. You see all the great things that are in you? You say, yeah, I like that. You like this part? Yeah. Can you do something with this? Yeah. You believe that you can change hearts and minds with this? Yeah. Okay. I put it back in you. I say, let's go get it. We out here, right? Know thyself. Make sure that you use these things correctly. Make sure that people are being built. Make sure that lives are being changed one mind at a time, being a voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. Let's get it. What is your gift? You build homes, let's build them. You cook food, let's cook it. You smile and show people positivity they never had, let's do it. You massage people, let's get you the table. You see what I'm saying? This is what it means to say Kwam Yasharal or rise, Israel. This is what we're talking about, is going through the process of these 5 E's. That's what we're talking about. If you're a part of something and you're not getting education, empathy, execution, edification, and elevation out of it, then I don't know what you're doing. And yes, I'm talking about even what I'm doing. Anyways, though, we got to get ready for our podcast. If you want to join us there, it'll be Minister Sharon and Minister Joseph teaching there today. Shabbat Shalom to everybody. I'm going to go ahead and get out your way. I told them I wanted to reach out to them and pray for them anyways before they get started. I'm excited about the word. They're going to build up on what they gave us last weekend. And those of you who got babies or, grandbabies, nieces, nephews, whatever, if you want to join us, if you're a baby yourself and you're listening, even what we call the youth. So, and it works for all ages. Like I promise you, the way that my wife has it set up, it was very powerful to watch it work, especially last week. And I was able to talk to some of the children. They really, really like what happened. So, we're doing little things like that. Sometimes it's going to be canonical based. So if you're somebody who's still hesitant about the Bible, even if you've probably never read the Bible through a Hebrew perspective. And when I say that, I mean literally learning the language, stuff like that, knowing what these things meant, knowing the true names, knowing what it was before colonization happened and stuff like that. If that's something that's too much for you, we do other things. I'm not sure exactly what they're going to teach today. I'm more of a follower in this, just like everybody else is, but I'm not sure what the actual lesson plan is for today. But we do stuff like teaching the alphabet, teaching, language before the alphabet, stuff like that. We do stuff as far as math is coming, things like that. We are making sure that we're teaching things as far as cultural things. We are going to do some things as far as arts and crafts. Eventually, at some point, we're probably going to start sending some stuff out via mail to those children that are taking things. Whatever you say is not African at all. Well, once again, if you don't, then you don't believe in what the Cushitic people of today still believe in. You don't believe in what the Ethiopian people believed in, who were never even had, white people or Eurocentric people, so to speak, come on their land while they were believing these things. You don't believe in what happened in Negro land. You don't believe in what was actually mapped out by Africans. You don't believe in the fact that Shem and Ham, or Africa and what you might call Asiatic people, were married into each other. And you don't look at it from that perspective. You only look at it from the perspective of Constantine once things were changed. And like we even discussed today, there's so much more to look at besides that. I don't know why people don't look at Flavius Josephus, who came before Constantine and was an Israelite and tells you what these things were. And he's the people that we actually know. Like when you talk about Vespasian, when you talk about Nero, when you talk about Caligula, heck, even when you talk about Augustus Caesar to a certain extent, and somewhat even Julius Caesar, a lot of y'all don't even know. If it's not for Flavius Josephus, you don't even know what you're talking about. But when he talks about your people and what he says you look like and what he himself says he looked like and what his culture was and what his belief was before he was gentrified, before he was colonized, nobody wants to listen to it. Matter of fact, that's one of the problems he has in his book. In one of his books, in the beginning, the introduction, he writes and says, "Hey, I'm kind of sick and tired about the fact that y'all don't believe me about everybody else's culture, but when I'm telling you about ours, you don't want to listen to me." But we're still doing the same thing. History repeats. Anyways, though, if you're on TikTok, stick around for a second. We're going to do a shout out. We'll show you how you can get in contact with us. Text us, email us, find out more about stuff. If you see something on there that says hashtag Find Kofi, that's hashtag FINDKOFI, my name, find, like you're looking for something, and then Kofi, KOFI. If you're looking for that, you can go ahead and get in contact with us through that, but we'll have that stuff up on TikTok. If you're on YouTube or Facebook, it's already in the description with the video. Thank you so much for being on, everybody. We're going to do our shout out in a little bit. If you've never done it before, it's pretty easy. It's going to be real quick, and then we're going to take our leave. As always, we thank you for being on again. Please check out my wife, as always, the Honorable Maya, on TikTok, YouTube, or website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish, not A&D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. Thank you for being on. Please study this stuff. Don't believe it just because I said it. Don't disbelieve just because I said it. Look up all the stuff that we gave you. And we gave you some receipts. See if they actually make sense. And if they do, study. If you have more to add, and heck, even if you don't like some of what I said, hey, at least spit out the meat. Eat the meat and spit out the bones. Right? Just because you don't want the bones and you feel like this is pricking you right now and you can't take it, get fed. All right. Thank y'all for being on. We appreciate you. If you're on TikTok, just stick around for a hot second, and then we'll show you how the shout out works. And it'll be a lot shorter than what we normally do because I got to make sure that I get in contact with those that are about to come on the podcast. But thank you all again for being on. We appreciate you. As always, it's been Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant to Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time by being a voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. And until I have the great privilege, opportunity, and responsibility of being in front of you all again, please remember, as always, your style, that you are loved, you are necessary, you're majestic, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be of it. Shabbat Shalom, family. Hopefully we'll hear from you on the podcast pretty soon. Okay, to everybody else who's still on with us on TikTok, this is how our shout out works.